So, yeah, today I'm actually going to be doing the hands-on work for my guitar build for Jurg's Cup 2. And so the first thing I'm going to do is going to be working on I'm going to be working on a fretboard of my neck. Here it is. So this is the first maple neck I've worked with, so I'm going to be doing something a little different with it. I'm actually going to be dyeing it. And before I do that, I have to prep sand it, and before I prep sand it, I have to straighten out the neck. I have a notch straight edge here. I tested this before. Before I came on live, and there is a little bit of a back bow. Don't know if you can tell, or yeah, the notch straight edge shouldn't be rocking back and forth. So there's a bit of a back bow in here, and so I'm gonna have to straighten out the neck first. And to address the back bow, I have to. So that means it's a little too tight. Let me see about. And I measured the truss rod socket before I came on, and so turn to the left. If you're watching this and you're ever thinking of tightening your truss rod, do it little by little, or loosening your truss rod. Do it little by little, because if you don't, you will screw up your neck. I gotta remember to face the camera. All right, let's see what's up now. Okay, doing a little better. I'm going to do like one more. You never do full turn on this. You only ever want to do like a quarter turn, eighth turn, maybe even less than that. And generally, when you're starting this, you want your neck as straight as possible. Yeah, I've only got one camera. And even though you can't see it, this thing does have a bit of a radius, so it's not always going to be the easiest thing to look at. It's not always going to be the easiest thing to measure, because you're on a round surface. One more tiny little turn. Again, you always want to go in small increments. You don't want to turn too much, because that will mess up the neck. All right, and it is perfect. All right, so we are in voiceover mode now. What you're seeing is an overhead shot of me prep sanding the neck, or actually the fretboard here. Sorry about that. Yeah, and just so you know, when you're building a guitar kit, there is no step in this process where you don't prep sand. So for here, I'm starting off with the coarser 100 grit sandpaper. Then I move on to a 150 grit, then a 220, then a 320, and then finally a 400. I'm using an eraser to press down on the frets occasionally. Well, not on the frets, on the fretboard. And that's just to give me a more even sanding. And I'm cleaning in between sands with a shop towel. And by the way, this is sped up to 1000%, or this part of the video is. So it only looks fast. This is something you want to take your time on. there is no rush. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And as you can see, there's still like just a huge mess in my workspace. I'll eventually work on that, but right now, um, I'm just gonna have to deal with it. Yeah, and as you can tell, as I go further up along the fretboard, it gets a little trickier to sand in between those spaces. All right, and now I am dyeing the neck. For this, I'm using Crimson Guitar's Stunning Stains water-based stains. Um, I'm using green here. The reason why will be apparent later on, um, unless you've been following me, in which case you already know what I'm going for, what motif. And yeah, I really like this stain. Or rather this wood dye. It really comes out great on just about any project I've done. I've used this on my first guitar build. I've used it on part of my bass. It is a really, really good water-based dye. And as you can see, I'm using Q-tips to get to some of the spots that were a little harder for me to reach. Nobody told me that. I just needed to get to those spaces close to the fret because I saw that I couldn't exactly reach there. It actually made the job a little easier. And I'm not too worried about the inlays. The dye didn't take to them very much, which is great because you'll still see the birds on the fretboard. And occasionally I'm going back and sanding in some corrections. That's just due to the fact that there were some glue spots on the fretboard, and I just needed to get rid of them. And looking at this video, I have some really bad posture. But that might have been corrected if I wasn't working on my drum throne. Alright, and here I am actually working on sealing the stains. The reason I'm doing this is because I found that when you just go straight from dyeing to a finish with nothing in between, it's going to be really easy for that wood dye to just come off, and that might have to do with the viscosity of the protective clear coat. So having a layer of sanding sealer which isn't as viscous is kind of helpful here. Yeah, and for this I am actually using shellac, which is a trick I picked up from Dan Thompson of Guns and Guitars. He started off with kit builds, and he's moved on to making custom basses and guitars. So he's got a really interesting channel, and I like his thought process on it. Spend less, play more. But yeah, so the reason I chose shellac is because, from what I understand, it makes the figure pop a little more. So I'm doing 3 layers of shellac. What I'm doing is first 1 layer, give it 30 minutes, buff it out with steel wool, do another layer, wait 30 minutes, buff it out with steel wool, final layer, and then buff it out with steel wool again. And I gotta say, I like the results that came out of it. Yeah, and it's still a little difficult to get through those upper frets. I will say this. This might be the last time I ever work on a maple neck. Um, I mean, not that I haven't learned anything, but it's just if I choose to die or even not not use the wood dye, I'm still going to have to do a sanding sealer and a clear coat, and it's just hell to work with at those upper frets. But yeah, the shellacking and the clear coat portions of this, they're sped up to 500%. So again, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Take your time. I'm taking my time with this. In fact, what I do is I'll work on a specific portion of it, then I will take a break by doing the video edits and everything, upload it to YouTube, and then go back to working on the guitar. Yeah, and as you can tell, there is some spillover on off on the sides. I'm not too worried about that because I'm going to need to sand the back of the neck anyway. But it's just, I'd want to minimize that damage as much as possible. Okay, and yeah, here's the final buff. And as you can tell by the table I'm using, there is a lot that gets lost there. I had to really clean off that table. Yeah, and I'm holding it close like this so I can really inspect the spaces that are closest to the frets, just so, just so I know I've gotten the glue spots too. Okay, so here it's been about a day or so to give the sanding sealer, or the shellac in this case, a good bit amount of time to dry. And here I'm working with Bear's water-based polyurethane. It's a clear coat, it's a gloss. Um, yeah, and I'm working with a paintbrush this time. Number one, because the instructions actually tell you to use a brush, but also because I learned my lesson from the last time, finally. Sometimes it's just better to use the paintbrush because the fret spaces are just so small, and sometimes it's hard to get all the way there. And there's nothing really special here. It's really the same process as the shellac. The only difference is I'm giving an hour's dry time as opposed to 30 minutes. Again, as per the instructions. Yeah, when you're doing this, you really want to look at the instructions for what you need. Yeah, and as you can tell, I am wearing a mask for this. The fumes that come from it are pretty light, I want to say. When I had the mask off, I didn't smell anything powerful. But one thing that they do tell you is that it does contain cancer-causing material. For the love of God, that's not something I want in my lungs. Okay? So I'm wearing a mask here. Yeah. The only time I'm not wearing a mask is after I've had the dry time and I'm just buffing out the clear coat with the steel wool. And yeah, you gotta occasionally stir the clear coat. Yeah, the video doesn't show me putting on as many layers of clear coat, but yeah, there's 3 on there. The reason I'm not showing that it's 3 is because I used the wrong camera for the first coat, so for a while it was just a face-to-face shot of me, and at no point did you see the progress on the fretboard. And I'm occasionally using my hand to mark off which fret is up next, or rather which fret spacing is up next. Okay, yeah, and that is it for the gloss. Now I am just uh, going to buff out the gloss for a little bit. Then I'm going to let it cure. Then I'm going to take out the orange peel. And yeah, that's just about it.